Great, 11:30, over to you.
11:31.
Okay.
All right, so you guys have an updated packet for you today. Obviously, the one for the EDAC meeting was from the end of September. So you can see in the important dates, and I kind of tried to do a synopsis so you guys can give me your feedback on whether you like it or not from our last Board of County Commissioners update, which was in August. So since then, just a highlight of some of the meetings and conferences that I've been a part of. Frontier County's Roundtable, the one on October 3rd, was led by POVA-ADO. That was the first formal sort of recognized meeting with the Frontier counties. I was at the Greater Newport Area Chamber meeting on the 2nd, which was at Kelly's. Unfortunately, the new owners were not available to meet. But there was quite a good turnout there. And I'm excited. Maddie Campbell, right? Yes, Sam Campbell is going to give an update at the EDAC meeting on some of the chamber activities and changes that they are looking at. We've got some great feedback from businesses there on things that they would like their chamber to help out with. So I'm anticipating a great partnership there. Maddie and I already have a meeting scheduled to talk about some ways that we can work with the chamber and put on some much needed trainings at the businesses. We got to do a whiteboard exercise where they could, what are you really struggling with right now in your business? What do you need? Those people sitting at the table. And so we got a nice list of stuff to look at and organize. So that was a great meeting. And
will that be disseminated? I mean, it's pure curiosity on my part. I'd love to see what the businesses think they're just struggling with right now.
Maddie has that, and it was handwritten. So I'm not sure what the Chamber of Commerce, that was an activity for her as the chamber.
Give us 2 or 3 of the top ones.
Social media was one of the biggest ones. Grants was the second one. And then kind of, I guess, overarching would be Main Street, that Main Street theory of curb appeal of foot traffic. What does that look like coming into your brick and mortar? That sort of, I think that kind of encompasses probably 3 or 4 of the things that they brought up, which not surprising considering that most of the businesses that were there,
right,
I think were downtown. I'm trying to think of who. I didn't take membership, it wasn't my meeting, but I'm fairly certain most of them were like downtown businesses, so it's not surprising that would be one of them. You'll also note the WIDA legislative retreat on the 22nd of August. That was in Ellensburg. And then I don't know where the ADO best practices meeting was just in Wenatchee. I don't think that one made, it's probably on your EDAC list here. That was quite interesting. It was a mandatory meeting through Department of Commerce. It's required of all ADOs, has to have someone present there. In fact, Jeff from TED has an entertaining story about what happens when you miss it, and they got put on double secret probation for a year because they missed 2. So there's apparently some hefty considerations that come down. So I was there, again, mandatory in person for all ADOs, and they Zoomed the entire first half of the day with Department of Commerce employees and ran out of food at lunch. And
you went to Ellensburg.
Wenatchee. That one was in Wenatchee. The legislative update for WIDA was in Ellensburg, but that one was in Wenatchee through Department of Commerce.
Same difference.
It all sort of starts to run together when you realize how intertwined things are.
So how big is that event? I mean, how?
Well, they did it at their port facility. The Port of Chelan, Douglas County has a new massive 3-story building right on the river there in Wenatchee. And there was there's 37 ADOs, so 1 person from all of those. And then there was several like Department of Commerce, and there was WIDA staff on site. There was Department of Commerce on site. And then they had some like small business, Washington State Small Business Association people. So kind of came in and out. So it was probably like 50 people there. It was honestly great. I went ahead of time and got a chance to meet with, you'll see at the very bottom is Frontier County's working group. And I separated those out pretty specifically. I hit on it since obviously you all have all seen the EDAC update that got sent out. I hit on it in that update that there were some things that came down the pipeline pretty quickly in the last 2 months that were incredibly negatively geared towards rural counties, rural ADOs. And so there's been a working group of, I would say 10 to 12 of us that have been meeting regularly, trying to react as quickly as possible to get some input into meetings where decision making was happening that our voices weren't being heard at. And so that's taken up quite a bit of time. And that's why I just noted multiple. I can't even tell you how many different Zooms and stuff there's been, but one of them was in person the night before the ADO meeting with Department of Commerce. And it has been incredibly helpful and surprising to hear how many other counties out there are echoing the same sentiments that we kind of were just in the office as we're dealing with things and navigating this process with Department of Commerce, to then hear that they're struggling with the same things. And what we sort of came up with was, why are we all, this many counties and this many ADOs, struggling with the same things, yet no one's got a voice before the Department of Commerce when you're talking about, you know, a huge percentage of what they're working with.
Question.
It's rhetorical. I mean, slightly, like we just.
Frontier counties, we don't have any vote.
No, we were told
because
that
we don't have any people.
Yeah, we were told that. You're only one vote, you don't matter. And we kind of felt like, well, if we get loud enough, I bet we do. So we've just started to collaborate and share notes, and we were able to support TED in a push. There's an additional funding piece coming down. We haven't seen any official paperwork on it, but it's supposedly an additional $10,000 coming from Commerce. I don't really know where that got generated from, but there was this big meeting about it, and they said, well, every ADO is going to get it. Well, when you're talking about TED, Sahuarita, Chelan, Douglas, and I think there's one other one that handle multiple counties,
right,
they were getting one $10,000 payment.
right, because they're one ADO.
Because they're one ADO.
Yes.
And I felt very strongly that if you're serving multiple counties and each county is a piece of that you should have equivalent funding. So we were all able to work together and advocate and help TED on that, which apparently, and I don't want to speak for him, he was going to try to get on today, but I don't know if he could make it or not. But he had been trying to advocate for himself with little to no success. So it was really cool to see what a bunch of us speaking up in a meeting could kind of drive and change. The next,
Excuse me, are the county you're speaking of, the frontier counties, are they primarily eastern counties?
so there's actually in here, and you can just take my.
That's okay, I can look at it.
Okay, no, that's okay. I'll get down to that here in just a second. So the next EDAC meeting is October 16th up in Medellin. And then upcoming conferences, I went ahead and am enrolled in a rural development initiative for leadership training. It's a lunchtime style meeting for the next 4 weeks, starting the 9th. Headed up to the North County Chamber of Commerce this week, and then turning around for our special board meeting. And then headed back.
Is that confirmed? The last one I went to, there just wasn't anybody there.
The North County.
Yeah.
She talked to Ryan.
Okay.
Kelly talked to Ryan.
That's confirmed.
And it'll be 6:30 at the Western Star on Thursday.
Oh, I probably just went to the wrong darn building.
They have changed. They were going to the Cutter, and now they're rotating locations.
So I'll be there, and then back in Wenatchee at the end of this month for the IACC conference. The next page you can see is the budget revenues. I'm sorry, do you guys have any questions on the important update dates? You'll see the revenues, they have not changed since your last report with that. Those numbers are the same, and that's because of billing out quarterly. We just haven't seen if it hasn't hit that quarter deadline. So we're standing at those numbers, but it'll be a significant change to the next one. And then just an update for you guys on the next page is the 2025 initiative. We had talked about at our last meeting that you would have some really pretty graphs and screenshots from the Department of Commerce website, and this is the update on it as of yesterday. This came through Monday morning. They canceled the training. The Department of Commerce website is not live yet. They still have not finished their revamp of it, for lack of a better word. And we are at a standstill, which also means that for reporting to Department of Commerce, they're saying that there will be an extension in timely reporting for CAI. So I've just continued to track on my own, as they directed for when it's ready, but just wanted you guys to see that and know that I didn't leave out the beautiful graphs and metrics intentionally, just that Department of Commerce is moving at the speed of Department of Commerce. Next page is the initiative. So I just went ahead and broke them down for you. This is where we're at currently. So this includes everything between the last time I was here and now. So we're tracking 80% startup assistance, 75% recruitment, 22% retention and expansion, and 0 on export or trainings, both of which export apparently, according to Diana, they do a large training, and what they expect ADOs to do is get businesses at the training, and then that training counts for your export, because they don't expect us to be the experts on foreign markets. Like overseas Paris Air Show is not on my to-do list this year. So that probably will stay at 0 until Department of Commerce announces their training, just so you guys know what to expect.
What's their training like,
I have no idea. Never walked through it before. And apparently it only comes out once, maybe twice a year. So I guess in the spring maybe will be a big push from Department of Commerce that they're going to be putting out all this stuff, which I assume leads up to those trade shows.
Just ping me when it gets close. I'm, as a business owner, be interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, we do a little bit of export. I wouldn't mind dabbling some more in that. I don't know what they're training, whether it applies or not. I don't know.
Well, and I don't know until she puts it out. So once we have that, you can, I don't know. To me, it's always never fun to look at a 0 on a report, but I wanted you to know the reason why it was that 0. And then the other one, the trainings, like I said, we've already talked with Maddie and the EDAC. So we have 2 in the works, which will push us right to just below 50% there. Okay. So I am perfectly comfortable with where the numbers are tracking at this point. In terms of our ADO contract requirements, I don't have any concerns. I don't think Kelly has any concerns. We're way ahead in several of them, which is great. On to the next, you have the updated site selection request. So excitingly enough, there were 4 this go around between the last time I was in here and today. Not excitingly, we could not submit on any of them. And you guys can kind of look through, I don't need to read the things to you. Project request number 4, I really enjoyed because it was all of 2 sentences long. However, I couldn't find a building over 12,000 square feet that wasn't currently in use. So, right out there, John, right at the bottom there. Oh. I didn't feel like wasting a whole nother sheet of paper. I'm sorry, I snuck it in on the bottom. We're conserving.
That's a big building.
Yeah.
Yeah, we scoured for a 50 to
I just love it because I was like, oh, this
is
is reasonable. I can look into this. And you'll see the one above that, it was a natural gas requirement, and up to a minimum, I'm sorry, of 250 megawatt for that one. I had a great conversation with POD on some of what they do have capacity for, which was super helpful for my understanding of just trying to learn the power grid and what their internal workings and stuff are. But unfortunately, the other thing that I felt like was quite interesting to note is, I think it was I can check my emails. One of these first 2 came in on Wednesday. We had the mandatory meeting for ADO best practices all day, and responses were due by Monday morning. So they gave us 3 business days to respond to. And one of the things we're going to cover at the EDAC is kind of looking at what it is when they're looking for an actual response, what that means, and showing you guys what that means. And quite frankly, 3 business days to respond to any of these, with the exception of number 4. If I had number 4, I could definitely handle that in 3 business days, right? there was some significant pushback from these quote unquote frontier counties again of the
especially
expectations.
if you look at like the power requirement schedule there, how can you have that information
in 3 business days?
Yeah. I mean, you could see if it was just in months now.
Yeah.
You could have that information, but to project it into the future.
Well, and this is just so this isn't the actual request that you fill out. These are just sort of the requirements, because when we talked before, I wanted to keep you guys in the loop of what industries are looking for.
Right.
So you have that. So these are sort of what I could share and they could share with me, but this is just almost a summary of that. Not inclusive of the details on these projects. So those are there for you guys. The last half of the ADO meeting had a phenomenal site selection presentation based on the rock wool project that landed in the Tri-Cities. I don't know if you saw that. They had a massive investment into a new rock wool fabricating manufacturing plant come into the Tri-Cities. And we actually got a presentation from the site selection staff that walked that process through. It was super helpful, just full of knowledge. And she ended her presentation with, if you have 150 acres and 90 megawatts of power, come talk to me now. That's sort of the benchmark within their company that if you've got that, they can find something. But of note too,
Zoning, did she delineate what zoning would be?
the assumption is industrial.
Okay.
And there was conversations there about how these companies are operating on timelines and with budgets to where she showed her funnel, her selection, which I just thought was like an amazing resource to get to see the back end of these companies and how they funnel their choices down. So they may get 30 in at the top of the funnel, and their goal is to bring the funnel down to 1 to 2 for in-person site visits as quickly as they can. So she showed all of her quadrants for decision-making, risks, why it's so important that these massive Excel spreadsheets have every hole plugged in, which circles back around to the 3-day time frame of when you have 350 questions to fill out, what that looks like. One of the first things that will get you tossed out of the funnel is land use. Land use and needing to combine properties, because the minute they get more than one landowner involved in it, just so if you've got someone that's saying here's 1,000 acres, I own all of it, versus here's 6 and we all own a piece of it.
It just goes back to geography here.
Yep.
And if you're in Kennewick or Pasco or someplace, 150 acres of open space is not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Here, that is a big deal.
And she talked about power too. She talked about how 1 cent increase in charges can lead to millions of dollars for these. So when we're getting like a range of 6 to 9 cents is what they want, and we're getting feedback that says, well, we can't do that low, but we could get to 12 or 13. Right. Sort of that perspective from the companies of, it doesn't seem like that much when you're talking cents, but when you're multiplying it by their use, that equates like $3 million in additional expenditures for them immediately out of the funnel. So we've reached out to them. Actually, we had a meeting scheduled, and then Hurricane Helene hit their headquarters. So they were unable to even power up or get on Wi-Fi. So we have a request in to see if they would be willing to do some sort of training / presentation. We're not sure what that's going to look like. Obviously, I was hoping to have those answers, but a hurricane waits for no one. So we'll have some more answers on that. But I thought that would be really informative and helpful, especially at a EDAC meeting, a presentation from that on that, and from someone in the industry that's actively working with these companies, right? Because things change rapidly, and even she acknowledged that from the time at which she left Kentucky and then came to her position. It's been I think she said like 5 or 6 years, and the power requirements alone that are shifting rapidly, it's changing entirely the balance of power between communities and companies, and it's changing the selection processes. And so, I thought that would be valuable, but like I said, hurricane hit. Your last couple pages on here, I just went ahead and provided you, and you guys all have access to this. This is just off the state website. But this is what OFM, the Office of Financial Management, classifies as frontier. we felt like it was really important, in our meetings that legislature has already acknowledged there's a gap, a difference of, they've sort of already put the title on it, and our squeeze of the orange juice a little bit further was, if you've already done that, then you need to recognize that in some other manners. So this just talks about how it's classified. Their requirements are in RCW. It's 8214-370. And then designations, rural frontier 1 and 2, and then rural. And so we are in the frontier 1, if you guys are interested in that, which is basically the rural list of the frontier. There's been a lot of jokes about covered wagons.
But when you talk about Frontier Counties meeting, you're really including all 23 or 22, Frontier 1 and Frontier 2?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, our meetings have been open and have gone out to all of these that include, Yakima was on one of the meetings from WIDA was the Yakima. And I know San Juan and Island County as well.
What's 3/4 of the state?
That's why we really felt like, if you want to say that we only have one vote, but when all of a sudden 3/4 of the state is sitting there with their one vote, it does mean something.
Yeah.
So we'll see where that takes us, but I was shocked to find out how quickly, which is just a life lesson, I guess, how quickly, if you are not sitting at the table, you were the first one cut and disregarded. And we've talked about that, of how important it is for our frontier counties that are really struggling with 1 employee or 2 employees to get to some of these meetings, to make sure that there's representation there that can speak on at least the generalities that we all share, knowing that there's unique differences between every bit of it. And then the last one is an article from the Seattle Times, and it's about a rural town in Washington. And man, if it wasn't just a feel-good story that I felt like all of us could use. So I included that for some reading for you. It has no bearing on our activities here in Pend Oreille County, but it is a cool highlight to see sort of an unknown metric through Airbnb. And somehow they managed to beat out Las Vegas, the little town of Quincy, for summer travel destinations on Airbnb.com. So just of interest, if you haven't seen that, I thought I'd share that with you.
Gentlemen?
Good, no, that's my question.
I have 3 topics to cover. They're all pretty much related. The first is, I asked early on the strategic plan. Mm-hmm. And the answer to Brian Smiley's question, how could you respond, in 3 days to a big request, is in large part driven by, if you had a strategic plan, you would be able to, because it would anticipate those kinds of needs in advance. So I'm still waiting for that. Second is Jim Couples, who was a driving force behind something called allthefarms.com. Don't know if you've seen that website, mm-hmm. But that was a strategic plan to catalog all the farms in the United States and then give them economic opportunities by having condensed all the information that by themselves individual farms would never be able to, get exposure to the market. So Jim Couples was a resource, a huge resource, so the Economic Recovery Corps, which provided the funding for these 65 fellows across the United States, I spent a lot of time digging into how closely does the deployment of these 65 fellows mirror what their original business intention was. And I found information on probably 40, 45 of them. And the short answer is not very close, because they got placed somewhere and their original intention was to do this narrow, focus. And then the organization that had this resource, this fellow, realized this person can do a lot of stuff. And so these people are working on all kinds of stuff. So this is a way of expressing my regret that Jim is no longer part of the orbit within the board and our ADO, because, and it'll relate to this, both the first and third, the strategic plan, and the third point I'll get to in a minute. And I really regret that. And I find that to be a huge lost opportunity for all of us. And the third point is, you mentioned Hurricane Helene. I was in Sandpoint last night for a presentation on Albany Falls Dam, but there were representatives from the governor's office, from the United States Senator's offices there, the representative from District 1, I guess it is, Mark Sauter. And what were they talking about? Business recruitment from affected areas of Hurricane Helene. So that led me to last night looking at what economic development organizations across the United States are doing. They're going into that area. They're poaching businesses like crazy. They're going to be out of service for a long time. Yes, land use, power requirements, water, all of those. And this relates to both what a strategic plan would allow is for a rapid response to those opportunities. Yes, it's a crisis and a disaster. Sorry about that. But we could be capitalizing on that big time with the existence of both a strategic plan and someone who could drive that plan forward. Those are my 3 comments / questions.
Was there a question?
Sure. What are you doing on any or all of those?
Well, Jim Couples is not under my control. So I'm not going to speak to that situation at all because he's not an employee of mine, not under my direction. Strategic plan, we are working on our plan and we have been executing on our projects that are within our control. As far as Hurricane Helene, I'll address that saying I obviously have a separate perspective, having been a first responder in disasters like that. I think it's an integrity thing to allow them to recover as humans before we try to poach their businesses. Quite frankly, short of renting a vehicle and driving down there in 4-wheel drive to find someone at a house who doesn't have running water and power, I'm not going to. I'm sorry. I inherently disagree with poaching someone in a time of crisis like that. Now, those conversations can be had and that approach can be taken, not until the humanitarian side is handled, in my view. That's just me.
Right.
And I'll take on the Jim Couples. Jim was, back in June of 23, we turned in our application. Deadline was, excuse me, the end of June. We were finally matched with Jim in December, and he came on February-ish sometime. His role that we had agreed to with ERC was he was basically going to be a project manager for grants. Some of those grants have been denied for us. Some have been pushed back, like the Chrissy grant, we won't even know until November. So Jim was assigned to help with broadband in Ponderay County. And he's got a great background in that. That's what he's doing for TED. And he's got a broad knowledge of that. So he fit a niche that was needed over here, just like in Colville, Stevens County, Ferry County. He has developed a great relationship with the PUD. And in our opinion, the board and myself, broadband and getting that out to our citizens, our businesses, potential businesses is a huge need. And so in talking with John Janey and then with the Economic Recovery Corps, we asked for him to be transferred to them to make the best use of his resources. We still struggle, as you know, you've all acknowledged, with land use and power. So we felt that right now, basically Jim's got 2 years left. It's best to get him going and get as much of the broadband money that we can for this county.
I'll respond to both of those. Jim can do a lot of stuff, as these other fellows are demonstrating. I heard what he said, beyond broadband. So I shouldn't have used the word poach. There are businesses in the affected areas where Hurricane Helene hit that are begging to have places where they can relocate quickly. So it's not a case of mercenary, it's a case of being responsive to a need that is driven by the fact that these manufacturers, they need to stand up their businesses somewhere really quickly, in part so their employees have a place to work and to keep their livelihood going while that area is being rebuilt. So heard what you said. What I'm saying is the economics can be in line with the values of respecting people in times of needs. And since our mission is to develop our economy, if it can be done in a way that respects the values that I believe we share and accomplishes the mission that you have both the authority and the duty, which is expand this economy. If those can be done at the same time, we should be doing it. That's all I have to say.
What exactly is your distress over Mr. Couples, Robert?
That the port and with the ADO as our representative, if you use Jim Couples in a most value-driven way, he could be leading the creation of the strategic plan. He could be leading the outreach effort to attract and retain and recruit businesses, whether from Hurricane Helene or starters here, and that he is underutilized as an asset by just doing broadband.
It seems to me that your distress is that you're not directing it, and that you're not in charge of it.
No.
You know, if the port and Jessica's overseers feel like that he has best served this community at the PUD and working in the area of fiber, then to me, I'm going to say, okay, they have the closer view of that. But what I see you doing is micromanaging them. So that's what I see here. Is it seems to me that you're micromanaging that, and you said, I think he should be doing this. Great. They're going to hear your thoughts. They're going to make their decision based on what they see. Yeah, I'm just confused.
Confused by what? You made your point.
Okay.
I've made my point.
Okay.
That we are an executive body to a degree, and we have to assess whether we're getting the value for the taxpayers' dollars out of those people to whom we're allocating tax dollars. I've expressed an opinion that Jim Couples could be delivering greater value to the county than what he is going to be delivering because he is going to be isolated.
And that opinion is contrary to their board and contrary to the board of the PUD and contrary to the people that are involved in this. I've noted your opinion, Robert. I'm just concerned of what your distress is about. I don't get it.
So let me ask you this then. Do you share any disappointment that there is today no strategic plan 6 months into this relationship?
There is no strategic plan?
Is there a strategic plan?
No, not on paper, no.
Okay, so there's not. Are you at all disappointed by that?
I don't know, Robert. That was your idea. Okay, that was your idea. And that's your issue.
But it could have been rejected, and it hasn't been since they're working on it. So if it was my idea and they've accepted it, I'm not sure why you're now sort of
I'm sorry,
rejecting.
when did we accept it?
Yeah.
I mean, I heard your
You say you're
feedback.
working on it.
I heard your feedback
Are
in
you
a
working
meeting.
on it?
No.
You're not working on a strategic plan.
No.
All right.
What is wrong with our get it done? You want paper, and as Corey
I
Ives
want a
told,
plan,
you want it on paper.
sure. If it's
Okay,
not
and
cool.
Corey Ives was here and asked you exactly what you wanted, and you said you wanted to see the paper portion. And we right now are focusing on getting moving and getting done. And I think my opinion, and I would put out there that it's my board's opinion too, that we are more, let's get stuff done. We are moving forward on feasibility study, a traffic study.
Both projects within our control, we are actively moving forward on.
Now,
Our meeting-
they're not to the point that they need a public hearing or anything like that. It is, we are moving forward, trying to find the grant money to get these things done. Yes, we will have public input when the time is correct, but we are moving forward. So Robert, what is wrong with that?
What's wrong with that is what you're telling me is that everything is going to be on paper except for the strategic plan. And the strategic plan is the guiding document that provides the vision and then the pathway towards accomplishing that vision. And a get it done attitude, I love the attitude part, but it leaves me.
I was gonna say, is that a board as a whole opinion here? Or is that a Commissioner
That's a
Rosie
great
grant?
question.
Yeah.
Does anybody else want to see?
Oh, I think you asked me if I'm distressed. I think the simple short answer is no, I'm not. Okay. And I'm not going to micromanage these two, nor their board, and nor others in the way that they see best to accomplish what they've been tasked to do. And, there is an issue of trust and an issue of creating a plan is your emphasis.
So,
I don't think they've said, yes, we will do this and fail.
okay, so
My answer is no, I'm not.
okay, so everything else, I mean, we had the discussion about, deployment of the .09 funds, where we're basically asking every applicant for a strategic plan of what they're gonna do, but they're gonna be exempt from that because they have a get it done attitude. Is that your response?
No.
That's not at all our perception either. Like, let me just be clear and try to bridge the communication gap that seems to be occurring here. I don't have a problem putting some things in writing. What I have a really hard time with is sitting at this table and having an open door policy with every one of you. I've answered every phone call, every email, welcoming any public, anytime. And to be sitting here and receive direction from one commissioner that does not sound like it's supported from the other two. And then we are also struggling with the fact that every time we leave somewhere, it feels as if there are counterproductive things happening around, and we are not all pulling in the same direction.
Like what? What's counterproductive that's going on?
Counterproductive is calling Ted to ask if they're upset about an agreement to move gym couples that they supported. Counterproductive is not discussing how we did have public meetings for our feasibility studies. We did put that out publicly. We did ask for the public input and helping us to move the mission along. And I will say, you have very strong opinions, and I have no problem hearing them or having a conversation about them. But I would just like to know what the consensus is from the entire board, which includes the other two sitting at the table.
Well, they're welcome to express themselves, and they will.
So I'll weigh in a little bit. I mean, it's both. My evaluation really would have been that you've got to build the plane while you fly it, right? Just you got to fly it. And so that's the gift and goes part. And I believe you do that well. I believe I would hope that you also see the value of the strategic plan. The one we had from the 80 study from the PUD was heavy. It was awkward to sit. I mean, you could go through that for 3-4 hours. And so that was like an engineered version of a strategic plan.
And how successful was that 80?
Well, no, that's
Yeah.
precisely it. There's so much more progress and promise in this update than in going through that massive document. And so in some regards, one more plan, one more study, I wouldn't prioritize it over the work. It should absolutely guide the work. It's, if for no other reason than Kelly and Jessica might be able to do it at a high level, but what when somebody else steps in, or what is somebody going to do when you're, when I'm on maternity leave, whatever else it might be, right? The document has a great deal of value in that regard. I would like to think we're going to compare apples to apples. This is the cost of a broken trust model, in my estimation. I'll say to play devil's advocate, Robert. You learned this from a TED meeting at this point 12, 13 days ago. And I've talked about it with a number of people, but never saw fit to call Kelly, which should have been the first call as far as I'm concerned. And so there's a pattern there. If she's got to hear it second or third hand, then it isn't helping the trust. It isn't beefing up the trust model. And so this sentiment that all oars aren't in the water or all oars aren't in the same direction, I get it. My expectation would be anyone who disagrees with my decision, I would have hoped they would come to me first and ask. I honestly would. That would be my expectation and my hope, because I think that's going to get better results. Until we can come to the place where the first time I have a problem, I'm calling the person I have the problem with as a first resort to get the answer to my questions. The rest of it's entirely moot, because it feels more like undermining. And I hope that part is clear.
So okay, we'll have the discussion. So what happened the first time I called Kelly to have the discussion to bring her in line? with an issue.
To bring me in line.
So bring her in line is
Let's have a do-over moment here, all right? Yeah, we're gonna do a
To bring
do-over.
her in alignment with what I was doing.
Yeah,
was on
you'll have
Wolf
to
Creek.
qualify that question.
Yeah, in line, so she's informed. What happens? That was when, I get a letter the next, week of shame on you for, it's like, this is what we had the discussion. So, I mean, I made the effort, found that it was really strongly rejected, and okay, so that didn't work. How would you like to go forward?
Let's have open, you to me to you, us to all of you. And note if there's a third party, bring them in. And that includes the Herb Drive, excuse me, Herb's Drive people. We are not pushing that park, and somehow that has gotten out there. And
Consistently,
that
being
the
put
board
out
is
there.
taking this over, that we are pushing for, it's not our park.
We literally handed you guys the feasibility study and said here was great use of Department of Commerce funds, a large amount. In fact, the majority of the grant award went to Monterey County through the Wolford Park project, not to ours. And when you look at the disbursement of funds of that.
When
And
that's
we handed it
drilling
to you.
down, can we back up, zoom out to the global view? It simply won't be possible until we come to a place where we're comfortable working one-on-one offline. I have zero obligation to laterally manage anyone. I find myself in the middle of these, and fine, that's the job. But to play the telephone game is to just get poor results, right? It all transmutes a little in translation. We have to come to a place where when I have a question of any of you, I hear that in the appropriate place. I don't have the opportunity to call you two directly. I have to work through Crystal or whatever else. Or we handle it open public meeting. Open public meeting isn't the appropriate place for every one of those conversations. To be concerned about it for 2 weeks, my expectation would be I'm gonna get that answer from Kelly or from one of the commissioners, whoever is there. I feel like that's a reasonable request. Certainly would get us better results.
The answer is not always going to be what you like. The answer sometimes is going to be, we felt like that was best, and you disagree. Okay, and we're not always going to agree. Okay? Our management styles are entirely different, Robert. When I have people that are working under me, I give them a degree of latitude to make decisions based on the information they have right in front of them. Okay, I would just say that sometimes the answer is going to be, that's what we thought was best. That's what looked good to us. The PUD agreed with us. We did it. You're going to be distressed about it.
I will say, Robert, I've expressed to a couple of them, I disagreed with the decision from the beginning. I didn't think Jim Couples had only 20 hours of work or had 20 hours of broadband work for Padre County alone. All along, how are you keeping that guy busy? Especially since you wrote the grant for Jim, you've got a grant writer and a Jessica. That all came after. ADO came after. And then you don't get, this project that needed management. And so it's like, how are you keeping that guy busy? Just to say, my preference would honestly be that we know you wanted this to go to Ted, and that ship has sailed, right? I'm not casting shade on it. Okay. Take me at face value, Robert. And so that decision is made. The dollars and the work goes to the ADO. And I would really hope the question, including the tough questions, this is Robert's preference, would be, what can we do to get you there? What can we do to help you get results? And then live it. And I feel like it's a lot of undermining and not a lot of propping up. And I'd like to see at least equal parts of that.
And I'd love
That's my opinion.
Love to hit on that. Ted and I have a great relationship. Jeff Koppel and I have been working really closely with the Frontier County stuff, and I have appreciated his help. And I hope that he has as well, because I was the first one to stand up and say that they deserve the equal representation. So in terms of behind the scenes with Ted and us, there is absolutely no issues working together, functioning together. We have already made some plans in the works for next year together. I want to hit on the strategic plan one more time. Because I will say, and I totally just spaced over this because it was in my notes and not in the packet. One of the grants that we've applied for just recently was to get funding to put together a group that would steer the recreational economy in the county. Because I see that as the economic development director as the most feasible, quickest path towards getting something moving here, because it's capitalizing on a resource we already have, which is amazing and incredible recreation, right? We already have the rivers, we already have the ski resorts, we already have the mountain biking, the ORV trails, the campgrounds, all of that. And so that is something that we've done in terms of creating the capacity to be able to not only facilitate the heavy paper side of things of making this plan, but then also at the same time moving the two projects that are within our control, the hotel and the industrial park forward, taking care of all the ADO designations from Department of Commerce, which as indicated by this whole canceled training, could be up now, maybe not. Here's some extra money. Just kidding. Let's meet about that. I mean, it's a lot. And I am there and I am showing up and I'm advocating on not only the state level for Monterey County, but also for this organization and things we want to move forward. So it's not that it's a no, I'm never going to have a plan to put before you, but it's a, we have these irons in the fire and only so much time to spend this money or do this project or whatever. Priorities happen, and the strategic plan has not been a priority. And it is hard to sit at the table and have one of you with very strong opinions about how things need to be done and questioning. Today has been so incredibly helpful to hear from both of you too, how you feel about it and what you need as a priority, because that helps me to know that you're a unified board and your expectations, what your expectations are for me. So I would ask for more of that. I think this is healthy conversation. I think it's great to have, and it helps me to be able to know exactly what it is that you want me to bring forward.
My goal is your success because it leads to the county's success. We have differences of opinion over what constitutes micromanaging, and we're three different people, so that's fine. The significant differences of opinion over what we as a governing board are responsible for holding you in terms of oversight. I just don't think we're going to bridge that, and that's the way it goes. How to construct a communications loop and a relationship that allows all of us to operate in the best interests of all the people of the county. I don't know. I gave my word, whatever it was 9 months ago, that in good faith I'd work with, wipe the slate clean. 10 is 10. That ship has sailed, and I'm committed to your success. And so I said it once, that immediate getting whacked by your letter, what that said to me was you were not interested in a real relationship, because it was so disproportionate to anything that should have resulted from, I made a good faith attempt, I called you, had a meeting with some people, and then on behalf of all the members of the port, all the employees of the port, to find that I have gotten a shame on you, Robert. It's like, that said to me, okay, they're not really interested in a real relationship. So how to repair that? I don't know. I'm willing to do whatever it takes.
I've got some thoughts.
Mr. Chair, could I interrupt?
Yes.
I feel like some of these need to be offline conversations.
Okay.
Your clerk does need to lynch break that.
Okay. Great. So I'd love to hear those ideas. I'd love to hear your ideas. I do want to give you, I know your lunch is 2 minutes to have the closing comments.
Let's get together or two of us with you.
Okay.
And have a discussion and bring it back.
We will do that.
Can I open just on the final, I'll make it brief. I don't know if you have a palette for this or not, if the strategic plan is a priority of yours and even ours by proxy, if we wanted to elevate that, have a conversation about what resources that might take in personnel or volunteer or whatever else.
Yeah.
And maybe we can have our cake and eat it too.
Okay. Thank you all.